Hi, I'm Kenneth.
And I'm Lauren, and today we're going to be helping you build a LEGO Education Spike Prime Kit with the expansion set. All right, let's watch it go.
Alrighty, I'll be showing you where to go if you want to follow along with the official LEGO instructions from their website. So you're first going to go to spike.legoeducation.com. So it's going to take you to this screen, which is the Spike app, and it may take a few minutes to load, or it may load very quickly. Just give it a minute. Once it's loaded, you will see a scene like this. We will be using the Spike Prime Kit, so you're going to click on the side that says Spike Prime. It will take you to a page like this. Once you get here, we are doing the build, so we will go to the build section. Now it has all these little things that you can click on that have instructions. We will be using the advanced driving base part. We will then do advanced driving base assembly, and we will finish by going all the way down to the tools section. Now, let's check out what it looks like when you click on one of these. So we're going to go into the advanced driving base part, and in here you have more sections. So you have the front, rear, left side, and right side. You will click on this for each section. So this is what it'll look like, and you can use the arrows to go one step at a time. And this will be helpful if you just want to see a different visual form of doing it. Or if you want to go through a bit quicker or skip some steps, you can drag this little line across the bottom. And when we're done, you can either hit done, which will take you back there, or if you're not at the end screen when you're finished, hit the X and it'll still take you back here. Now, we will be going and showing you what a section looks like if it does not have these little folders inside. So the advanced driving base assembly just takes you straight to the instructions because there is only one section for it. And the tools section is the exact same layout as the advanced driving base, and that once you click it, you have multiple options to click on to choose which section you're going to be building. In the video, in the top left side, it will tell you what folder we are pulling these instructions from, and then in the center, the main text will tell you exactly which folder we are using. When it comes to the advanced driving base assembly, we will just say advanced driving base assembly because there is not another folder inside of it. Hello everyone, I'm here to show you what these little numbers mean when you see them following along with the online instructions from LEGO or with the instructions that are in the video. So what these little circles mean is how many holes high this little peg is. And this is a 1-to-1 ratio, so if you hold up a peg, that is a 3-hole high peg. And we can check that by this is a 7-hole. We set it next to it, and that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and it lines up. So basically what you want to do to figure out which one you need is you can just hold it up here with 3 to 11. Now some of them may be bigger, but for the axles, all of them should be within this height. So that one's a 9-hole. This one's 3. Now, if we don't have this, that's okay. What we will do is we will use any beam. And we're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. This is a 15-hole beam. And we will take and hold one of these up right here. And that's 1, 2, 3 holes. So we know that this is a 3-hole high beam. Do the same with this one, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And so this will be a 9-hole, and we can check it over here. Yep, that is a 9-hole axle. So as we're going through the instructions, whenever you see one of these little circles, that's going to tell you how many holes high the axle needs to be for that step. Now you may also see a little square with a number in it. And that will correspond with the beams, and it will tell you how many holes high the beam needs to be to use for the step. And there you have it. Now you know how to find out what size axle you need. Now we can begin the build. We are going to start in the advanced driving base parts with the front part.
So to start, we're going to get 2 black pin connectors and a black 9-hole beam.
It starts out pretty easy. You're just going to stick 2 pin connectors in the 4th hole down and then the 4th hole up on the beam. Now take 2 gray double connector pegs and stick them at the very bottom and at the very top of the beam. Make sure you put them in the opposite side of the beam from where you put in the pin connectors from the last step. Now take 2 more pin connectors and plug them into the top hole and the bottom hole of the gray parts from the last step, like I'm showing here. Alright, let's get some stuff on the chassis. This frame here is 7 holes long, and we're going to be plugging in our double connector pegs right in the center of the frame right here, so that there's 1 hole on both ends that is left empty. With 5 more black pin connectors, plug them into the frame like we're showing here. Make sure they're on the same side with the part we attached in the last step. And this last connector is going to go straight in the middle, or the 4th hole from either side. For this step, grab 2 white double cross blocks and 2 blue connector pegs with axles. The double cross blocks have 2 holes for axles and a circular hole in the middle. Take the axle side of the blue connector pegs and plug them into the axle holes on the white double cross blocks. Now take our 2 super complicated, not really, blue and white assemblies and stick them into the frame like shown here. The blue pegs will go into the 2nd hole from the edge, and it's important that the white part points outwards. Grab 6 more pin connectors and pay close attention to which holes you're putting them into on the frame. And this step is kind of easier to show you than to talk you through it. This step we get to mess with 2 connector pegs with axles and a super awesome sweet motor. Plug the connector side of the pegs into these bottom 2 holes in the motor. Grab the blue and green wire clips and place them onto our blue pegs here. Make sure the tail end is facing the top of the motor. It's kind of hard to see this step, but you're going to turn the motor over to the bottom side, and these 2 holes on the very top and bottom are what you're going to plug into these 2 black pegs. Also, you can go ahead and slide the wire into the green wire clip, and there we go. It really looks like we're getting somewhere now. Next step, we need 1 pink 4-hole connector block and 4 pin connectors. This is another easy step, just plug in the connectors into the side holes in the block. Now take 1 3-hole I-beam and 1 connector peg with the axle side. Plug the pink 4-hole block from the last step into the holes in the I-beam. The 2 black pin connectors will plug into the 2 side holes, and you'll plug the blue connector pin into the center hole. Grab the red clip. In this step, we're going to take another wire clip and plug it into the blue connector pin. Easy peasy. Now let's attach it to the mainframe. Plug in the middle hole at the bottom of the I-beam into the black connector pin right in the center of the frame here. This is another easy peasy lemon squeezy step. We're going to plug another 3-hole I-beam into the other side of our pink 4-hole block. Make sure that once connected, the parts are flush on the top and the bottom. Now find 2 blue connector pegs. These are the ones with the long end and the short end, and this super totally awesome tiny camera. This is the camera part right here, and if you flip it over, it's conveniently got 2 holes that look like something should plug in, and what do you know, the shorter than connector pegs plug right on in. Now find yourself a gray double connector peg, and we're just going to attach it to the side of the camera. Alright, so this is my favorite part of the build, and you're about to find out why. So you're gonna find the white ball in this blue roller piece, and you're just gonna punch that ball right on in, and it's so satisfying. Now get the roller piece from the last step and our camera. Pay close attention to where I plug these in at. The 2 gray pegs sticking out of the camera are gonna go into the side blue holes on the roller. Make sure that the camera is pointing down in this step. In this next step, you're going to need to find 2 more black connector pegs and pay attention again to where I'm plugging these in at. Look up into the top and the bottom hole on the side of the roller without the camera attached. Woo, we really built up this camera now. So next you're going to grab yourself a blue angular beam, and the short side of the beam with the 3 holes is going to plug on into the 2 black pegs. Make sure that the tail of the beam is facing away from the camera assembly. Let's attach the camera assembly to the frame now. The last and the 3rd hole of the tail side of the blue angular beam are going to plug into these 2 black pegs. Ignore me struggling right here, and make sure that when you plug it in, the camera is inward. We're going to be making another camera assembly, but mirrored this time. Find another camera and 2 blue connector pegs. You're going to plug the short ends into the back of the camera. Grab a double gray connector peg and plug it into the side of the camera again. Snap the other ball into the other roller now. You're going to attach the camera to the opposite side of the blue roller. Last time we plugged it into the left 2 holes, and this time we're going to attach it to the right 2 holes. Get 2 more black pegs and be sure to plug them into the same 2 holes that I did here. The exposed part of the peg should be facing away from the camera. Grab another blue angled beam and plug the 3-hole side into the 2 black pegs. Now let's get it all together. This camera assembly is going to attach the same way as last time, but on the opposite side. Next, find a long beam with 15 holes. This is going to go onto the 4 blue pegs on both sides of the cameras. And now it looks like he has a face, and he's saying, "Oh, you're doing so great, keep on going." Next up, find 2 classic yellow bricks and 4 red connector pegs. These pegs are the ones with the long side and then the short side with the axle. Stick the short side of the pegs into the 2 outer holes of both the yellow bricks. Grab 2 black smooth pin connectors now and slide them onto one of the red pegs on each brick. And let's go ahead and get them attached. You're going to plug in the red peg with the black connector piece into this hole right here and go ahead and push as far down as it will go. Do the same with the other side. The red peg with the black connector will go into this hole right there. Oh, he says hello again. Starting with the new assembly again, get 2 magenta connector beams and 4 black connector pegs. Plug the black pegs on one side of the magenta beams. Back to our main assembly, we're going to plug in the sides of the magenta beams without the black pegs in it into these blue pegs. I bet you've noticed that there's wires everywhere by now, so let's tuck those into the wire clips so that it looks a bit more organized. For the next assembly, find 2 black connector pegs and a gray 4-hole gear. Pretty easy step, just plug the 2 black connector pegs into the 2 opposite holes on the gear. Now to attach it to our main assembly, plug it onto the top of the motor. It doesn't matter here which orientation you plug it in at, but make sure it can do a radical spin.
Congratulations, you have finished the front part. We will now move on to the rear part.
So start with 2 gray double connector pegs and a black 9-hole beam. Plug the 2 gray connector pegs right at the end of both sides of the beam. Get another 9-hole beam and pop it right onto the other side of the double gray connector pegs. Now grab 2 more black connector pegs and plug them into the 2 outer holes of both the gray double connector pegs. And then grab 4 more black connector pegs and watch carefully where I'm plugging these in at. They're going to pop into the black beams 4 holes from the edge in both directions. Break out another motor and pop the bottom of the motor right onto the 2 black pegs from a couple steps ago. Man, we need so many black connector pegs for this robot. Grab yourself another 4 black connector pegs. With the cable bit of the motor facing away from you, plug the pegs into the corner holes on the left side of the motor. Like we did many steps ago, we're going to plug the 4 black connector pegs into the side of the magenta connector beam. Now with another 3-hole across I-beam, plug the magenta beam right into one side of that and check that it's flat on top. Back to our previous motor, we're going to plug the bottom of the I-beam straight into the 2 black lower pegs so that the magenta beam overlays on top of the motor. Put another gray I-beam on the other side of the motor in the exact same orientation. It should lay flush on top and the bottom. For the next part, find 4 gray connector pegs with bushings and 4 blue connector pegs with axles. Plug the blue axles into the gray bushings. Back to our motor assembly, plug the blue connector pegs into the corner holes on the side of the motor without the black pegs. Now find 2 more black 9-hole beams and you're going to push the ends of the beams onto the gray pegs like you see here. They will both be sitting on top of the I-beam. This is a super duper easy step. Plug the blue connector peg with the axle into the wire clip. Next, we're going to plug a blue peg into the fourth hole from the edge of the upper black beam. Make sure the clip is pointing downwards and go ahead and slide the wire from the motor right on through. For this step, grab 4 yellow axles and 2 white double cross blocks. Put the axles into the holes on the white blocks so they're sticking out just like this. Now take 2 gray cross blocks and plug the axle side into the yellow axles. Make sure the 3 holes of the gray blocks are facing away from the center of the white blocks. Then place a light blue cross block onto the other yellow axle, making sure that the hole is facing down. On this other one, we will do the same pieces on, but mirrored. With 2 more white double cross blocks, snap those onto what's left of the yellow axles. Now to get these onto our motor assembly, pop the center holes of the white blocks onto these black pegs, and for this step, double check that the light blue cross blocks are facing inwards towards the gray I-beam. Continuing, find a teal 13-hole beam and 2 blue connector pegs. These are the ones with the long end and the short end. The small end of the blue pegs are going to pop into the 4th hole from each end. Back to our motor assembly again, throw these blue pegs into the holes of the teal cross blocks. Grabbing another teal 13-hole beam, pop them on top of the remaining blue connector pegs from the last step. This is another simple step. Snap 4 black connector pegs into both sides of these 2 yellow tubes. Now pop those into the second hole from each end of the upper teal 13-hole beam. This step might seem familiar. Plug 2 black connector pegs into opposite holes on a 4-hole gear. Like we did with the last motor, snap that onto the top of the motor and make sure it spins. Moving on, find this magenta 6x4 beam frame and 2 red connector pegs with bushings. Pop the long end of the red connector pegs into the second hole from each end of the long side of the frame. Now pop the short end of the 2 black connector pegs with long axles into the 2 end holes of the opposite side of the frame. The 2 exposed black pegs peeking out from the yellow tubes are going to pop right into the edge holes of the side of the frame with the red pegs. Next up, we need 2 7-hole beams and 2 black connector pegs with long axle ends. Pop the short end of the black pegs into the end hole of both beams. To connect it with our motor assembly, plug the other end hole of the beam with the 2 black pegs on the magenta frame. 2 gray pegs will also pop into the beam here.
Congratulations! You have finished the rear part. We will now build the right side.
Find the wider motor and 5 of our favorite black connector pegs. plug those into the same holes I'm doing here. Find yourself a 4x3 black frame and pop it right here on the end of the motor. For this next step, you'll need 2 blue connector pegs and snap the short end into the top 2 holes on this side of the black frame. Plug the long end of the gray connector peg with the bushing end into the top hole on the bottom right of the black frame. And lastly, plug 2 black connector pegs into 2 opposite holes on the little spinny motor piece. We're finally getting to the wheels. Pop the 2 black pegs from the top of the motor into the 2 holes in the center of the wheel. Now watch it spin. Now snap the long end of the 2 blue connector pins into the 2 holes in the center of the wheel that are empty. Next, pop a magenta connector beam onto the blue peg sticking out of the wheel. This is going to be an easy peasy step. Find a black beam with a cross hole and a gray axle and push the axle through the cross hole. Grab a black 3x7 angular beam and another black beam with a cross hole. Push the axle into the end hole of the small side of the beam. Make sure the black cross hole attached is facing the same direction as in the video, and then push the other cross hole beam onto the other side of the axle in the same orientation. It should be flat on top. Now take a yellow axle and push it to the last cross hole on the long end of the 3x7 angular beam. Then snap a gray double connector peg into the next 3 holes from the yellow axle. Find yourself another 3x7 black angular beam and connect it to the rest of the assembly so it's parallel with the other black beam. Make sure all of your holes line up. It should be the same for both beams. Next, connect the cross hole of a black beam with the cross hole to the gray peg at the bottom of our beam assembly. It's important how you attach it here, so double check that all 3 of these black cross hole parts are all in the same orientation. You want it to be flat with a longer black angular beam. Grab a gray connector peg with the bushing end and plug the long end into the hole on the far left like what you see here. To attach it to our main wheel assembly, pop the 2 holes on the right of the bottom of the beam into the blue pegs like this. Now push the gray connector pieces into the assembly. Moving along, now find the dark gray axle, and this is going to pop into the very center hole on the top of our wheel assembly. It's going to lock both of these assemblies into place. Super duper easy step here. Snap 2 black connector pegs into the 2 holes on the wire side of the motor. For this next step, you'll need 2 blue connector pegs and snap the short end into the 2 holes on the gray cross block. Now with another black double angular beam, you're going to snap both of the blue pegs into these 2 holes on the curve of the beam. Find yet another gray cross block and attach it to the other side of the double angular beam in the same orientation as the last one. So it should be flat on the bottom and flush on the front. Grab 2 red connector pegs with axles and plug the short axle end into the cross holes from the previous steps. These I-beams have holes on the front and the side here. Pop the side holes all the way into the red connector pegs. Next, take a yellow 3-hole beam and plug up the last of the red connector pegs. To attach it to our main wheel assembly, make sure the black angular beam is oriented up and plug the 2 bottom holes here to the black pegs on the wire side of the motor. The black angular beams should all be touching on the top after this step. Now push the yellow axle all the way through the connector beams. Now plug in the axle end of the axle connector peg into the cross hole of the wire clip. Transitioning back to our wheel assembly, flip it on over, orient it so that these pegs are facing out this way, and now we're looking at the bottom of the motor. Our blue peg from the last step is going to plug into this bottom hole, and make sure that the wire clip is pointing up, and then you can wiggle your motor wire into there, and it's going to be so organized now.
Congratulations! You have finished the right side. We will now build the left side.
And let's get started on basically building the exact same thing again, but mirrored this time. Like how we started our previous wheel assembly, we're going to plug 5 black connector pegs into the sides of the wide motor. This is basically going to be the mirror of what we made, so the pegs are going to go on this side this time. Now get your black 4x3 frame and connect the long end to these 2 black pegs. With 2 blue connector pegs, we're going to plug the short side into the far left 2 holes of the black frame. Then take your gray connector peg with the bushing end and snap the long end into the top of the frame at the bottom right hand corner. With 2 more black connector pegs, throw these into the 2 opposite holes on the top of the motor. Find the other wheel and plug the center holes onto the black pegs on the top of the motor. And again, make sure it spins. Grab 2 more blue connector pegs with long ends and plug the long sides into the center top of the wheel holes that are empty. Put the magenta connector beam into the 2 blue connector pegs up top. And now grab a gray axle and black crosshole beam and push the axle through the crosshole. Then get a black 3x7 angular beam and another black beam with the crosshole. Push the axle into the end hole of the small side of the beam. And then push the other crosshole beam onto the other side of the axle in the same orientation. Now take a yellow axle and push it into the last crosshole on the long end of the 3x7 angular beam. Then you're just going to pop the gray double connector peg into the next 3 holes. Find yourself another 3x7 angular beam and connect it to the rest of the assembly so that's parallel with the other black beam. Next, connect the crosshole of the black beam with the crosshole of the gray peg at the bottom of our beam assembly. Grab a gray connector peg with the bushing end and plug the long end into the hole on the far right this time. Make sure you don't push it all the way in yet. To attach it to this new wheel assembly, pop the two holes on the left of the bottom of the beam into the blue pegs like this. And then go ahead and push the gray peg all the way in. Now get a dark gray axle, and this is going to pop into the very center hole on the top of our wheel assembly. Time for an easy step. Snap two black connector pegs into the two holes on the wire side of the motor. Plug the short end of the two blue connector pegs into the two right holes on the gray cross block. Now with another black double angular beam, you're going to snap both the blue pegs into the two holes on the curve of the beam. Find yet another gray cross block and attach it to the other side of the double angular beam in the same orientation as our last one. Grab two red connector pegs with axles and plug the short axle end into the cross holes from the previous steps. These I-beams have holes on the front and the side, and again pop the side holes all the way onto the red connector pegs. Next, take a yellow 3-hole beam and plug up the last of the red connector pegs so we can't see them anymore. To attach it to our main wheel assembly, make sure the black angular beam is oriented up and plug the two bottom holes here to the black pegs on the wire side of the motor. The black angular beams will all be touching on top after this step. Now push the yellow axle all the way through the connector beams. Now plug in the axle end of the axle connector peg into the cross hole of the wire clip. Flip your motor assembly on over and orient it so that the wire is on the right side. Our blue peg from the last step is going to plug into this bottom hole, and make sure that the wire clip is pointing up so then you can wiggle your motor wire in there.
Congratulations! You have finished the left side. We will now be moving on to the advanced driving base assembly.
To start, find both halves of the main power brick and you're going to snap them together. Moving back to our main assembly, you're going to connect the wire of the far right to the center of the brick. This will be port D. The wire on the far left is going to plug into the left hole. This will be port B. And the center wire is going to plug into the far right. And this will be port F. Now break out your left wheel assembly and plug its wire into the left position on the opposite side of our brick. This will be port A. Your motor assembly wire is going to plug into the center. This will be port C. And the right wheel assembly is going to plug into the right. This will be port E. To attach the left wheel assembly to the main frame, using the holes on the inside of the wheel assembly, pop the motor onto the two black pegs on the main frame. Make sure that the motor is oriented with the wire at the top, and after you do that, then you can do the same thing with the right wheel assembly. You might want to pause the video at this point to make sure that your robot is looking the same as ours. Alrighty, now to connect the brick to the main frame, you're going to pop the 4 holes on the bottom of the brick onto the 4 black pegs on the top of the motors. It might take a little bit of finagling, but once you get it, it's going to look fantastic. Now to attach the last assembly onto the main frame. You're going to be plugging in the sides of the gray I-beams into the blue connector pegs on the main frame. Now push the gray connector pegs all the way in. Get a 6x4 magenta frame and 2 red connector pegs with bushings. The long side of the pegs are going to snap into the second hole from both the top and the bottom of the long side of the frame. Don't push those in all the way yet, we'll get there. Now this black peg and the one on the other side are going to plug into the magenta frame. Make sure the red pegs are facing outwards. Grab 2 axles with stops and they're going to pop all the way into these 2 holes. Flip our beautiful robot over now and push the 2 gray pushings onto these 2 exposed black pegs here at the bottom. Next, find a black 4x3 frame and a gray double connector peg and attach the pegs into the top 2 holes on the 3-hole side of the frame. Now attach another 4x3 frame to the other side of the gray connector peg. Gather around 4 more black connector pegs and they're going to go into the 4 corner holes at the top of the frame. Let's get it attached to our robot now. So the 4 holes here will be plugged with the black pegs from the last step. Flip our awesome robot back over and put it on standby.
Congratulations! You have finished the advanced driving base assembly. Before we move on to the next part, we're going to take a quick break with our friend Evie.
Hello there! In this section of the video, we're here to discuss mechanical advantage. Mechanical advantage lets you save effort. For example, if you wanted to lift a rock that weighs 5 times more than you did, it would probably seem like an impossible task. However, this task becomes much easier if we decide to use mechanical advantage. One way we can do this is to use a seesaw. By placing the rock on one end of the seesaw and standing on the other end, it's likely that the rock isn't going to move. However, we can fix this by moving the pivot point of the seesaw closer to the rock. Once positioned, we can then stand on the other end of the seesaw and move the rock. This is now possible because the work is done by the mechanical advantage of the seesaw. The seesaw in this example has a mechanical advantage of 5 because it takes 5 times less effort to move the rock. Mechanical advantage is present in different types of machines, from simple ones like the seesaw and more complex ones like an engine. So next time you decide to move something heavy, remember to take advantage of mechanical advantage.
Thanks, Evie. Now let's get back to the build. We will now move on to the tools folder, starting with the dozer blade.
In this next step, find a magenta connector beam and 2 black connector pegs and just snap those pegs right into the side. Okay, grab 2 yellow tubes now and throw those right over the black connector pegs. Get another black 4x3 frame and place the piece from the last step snug inside of it. Using the long side of the 4 blue connector pegs, insert them into the 4 outer holes on both of these sides of the frame. This will really lock both of these parts together. Alrighty, next plug a black axle into the small yellow bushing. Easy. This tiny tan piece right here is a conical wheel, and you're gonna snap the side with the gear teeth onto the axle. Push it all the way into the yellow bushing. Back to our frame, pop the axle into the center hole of the magenta brick, and then on the other side of the axle, plug in the black wheel and then watch it spin. Find a gray axle now and a white axle tube and just pop the tube on the end of the axle. Now thread the cross hole of the red cross block onto the axle. Next, light on the gray bushing. Then gather 2 double bevel gears and slide them both onto the axle. Next onto the axle is going to be a yellow 3x3 T-beam. Slide the bottom hole of the T right on into the party and secure it with another bushing. Now take a red axle and plug it into the white axle tube, and a black connector peg with a ball joint end will plug right on into the outer hole of the red cross block. To combine the 2 assemblies, you're going to plug the 2 holes in the yellow T-beam into the blue peg sticking out. And then you can hit it and it'll spin. Then find another 3x3 yellow T-beam and slide it onto the axle using the same hole as the other one, and snap it into the blue pegs, and then go ahead and secure it with another bushing. Alright, let's grab 2 black curved racks and 2 gray bushings. There are 3 things to remember in this step. First, make sure the indent on the rack is facing to the outside of the assembly. Second, make sure that you plug the rack in so that it faces the opposite of the ball joint. And third, make sure the red cross block is facing straight up and down when you attach the gear racks. Now pop the gear racks onto the axle on each side and secure them with the gray bushing. For this next step, plug in 2 red axles into the cross hole of the 2 black cross blocks. Now get 4 more black connector pegs and snap those right on into the remaining holes. This is a bit tricky to see, but you're going to plug in the red axle to the outside of the last hole on the gear racks. Make sure that the black pegs are facing up. Using 4-grit connector pegs, fill these holes in the gear racks. Let's grab 2 black curved racks. Pop the black curved rack onto the axle and connector pegs, making sure that the indent faces in this time. Now with 2 of these fancy tan connector pegs, plug the short end into the second hole from both ends of this magenta 11-hole beam. With the 15-hole black beam now, pop the 4th hole from both ends into the tan connector pegs. Go ahead and find the blue panel. These bottom holes in the panel right here are what we're going to plug into the tan connector pegs. To attach it to our main arm assembly, plug the black empty edge holes into these pegs at the bottom. Make sure that the blue panel is in the center here. We want to put the dozer piece on the end that's opposite of the cameras. It's kind of hard to see here, but snap this black gear on the arm assembly into the magenta connector beam at this end of our robot. Once that's snug in there, push the red pins all the way in, and now our little arm can move.
Congratulations! You have finished the dozer blade. We will now move on to the lift arm.
Onto something new, plug 2 black connector pegs into both holes on one side of the magenta connector beam. Now cover those with these cool yellow tubes. Break out a black 4x2 frame and pop the part from the last step right in the center. Then take 4 blue connector pegs, insert the long end into these 4 holes, locking the center part into the frame. In this easy step, squeeze a yellow half bushing onto the right size black axle. Next step, take the conical wheel and plug the side with the gear teeth onto the axle. First, plug the axle from the previous steps into the center of the magenta piece. Then take the black wheel and pop it right onto the side of the axle that doesn't have the tan or the yellow piece on it. Grab another 3x3 yellow T-beam and plug the top of the T into the blue pegs attached to the yellow tubes. Next up, we're getting close, I promise. Find this gray axle and a red cross block and thread the cross hole of the red cross block onto the axle. This is another 4x4 black angular beam, and you're going to plug the axle from the previous step into one of the cross holes at the end of the beam. You want to make sure that the red cross block and the black angular beam create a right angle once on the axle. These tan parts are double conical wheels, so take the wheels and slide them both onto the axle of the opposite side of the black beam from the red piece. you'll need to get 2 blue connector pegs and a black connector peg with a ball end. Pop the short end of the blue connector peg into the second hole in the black angular beam. Make sure the blue tail is pointing the same direction as the gray axle. The other blue connector peg is going to go straight into the elbow, and the black connector peg is going to go into the top hole of the red piece. Make sure that the ball end is facing away from the angular beam here. Now this 9-hole black beam is going to snap right onto the blue pegs. The top blue connector is going to plug into the top hole on the beam. With another black angular beam, snap the last hole of the long end onto the gray axle so it's parallel with the other angular beam. Next, put 2 gray bearings onto the long side of the gray axle. Alrighty, let's attach the 2 assemblies together. The gray axle is going to go straight into the top of the yellow T-beam. Take another 3x3 T-beam and throw it onto the side just like this. It should be parallel with the yellow T-beam on the other side. Okay, plug the long end of the blue connector peg into the last hole on the angular beam. Now put the other blue peg 2 holes over. Grab yet another black angular beam and plug it into the blue pegs like shown here. The yellow axle is going to squeeze into the very last hole onto the angular beam. Now this black rack is going to go onto the yellow axle. After putting it on, the rack should be in the same orientation as the angular beam is attached to, and make sure that the teeth are facing up. Next, throw another black angular beam onto the remaining pegs so it's in the same orientation as the other one. To attach it to our robot, snap the bottom of the black frame inside this magenta frame. Then you can go ahead and push in those red connector pegs. And now, you have a robot that can both lift and push things.
Congratulations! You have completed the lift arm. We will finish with building the crates. We will be building 1 crate, but you can build as many as you have pieces for.
Find one of these green blocks now, and you're going to find this black disc, and you're just going to slap that disc right in the center of the green block. This cool gray axle with the bearing end is going to go right in the center hole. Make sure that the bearing hole is in the same orientation as in the video. Then with a small yellow axle, plug up the cross hole. These yellow angular blocks that look suspiciously like macaroni are going to go onto the yellow axle like so. Now plug up the yellow axle holes with the red axle pieces. Next, take another yellow angular elbow piece and another yellow axle. Pretty obvious here, just pop the axle into the cross hole. Then put another elbow piece on the other end of the axle so it looks like this. Now let's put them together. Just pop our yellow macaroni looking pieces together so it makes like this a rectangle.
Congratulations! You have now built a robot. Before Kenneth teaches us how to program our robots, we're going to take a quick break with our friend Jacob.
Oh, I didn't see you there. My mind was just spinning about motors. So hi guys, my name is Jacob. I'm an engineering student at UNT. And so today we're going to be talking about motors. So what motors do is they turn electricity into motion. And so this rotational motion is called torque. This torque can be used for a lot of different things like spinning wheels or moving limbs, even though that's not how you might originally think about it. It's the same kind of concept that we apply with motors. And so now we're gonna do a little demonstration so that y'all can see what it's really like. Okay, so now we're gonna be doing our demonstration. Here I have our motor. This is a 12-volt motor. And here I have our power supply. This power supply is going to be providing the electricity to our motor. And so if I go ahead and turn on our power supply, it should be running at 12 volts. And so here we see our motor spinning, right? And so I'm going to be lowering the voltage. And we'll see that the motor is going to start spinning a lot slower. And so whenever you're changing the speed on your Mindstorm, this is exactly what it's doing. It's going to be lowering the voltage. And so that's why it's going to be going slower or faster depending on whether or not you set it to go slower or faster. Well, so you can see it's going pretty slow right now, right? And so we can actually change the direction of the current, right? If we just switch these two right here. And we can see that the motor starts spinning, but now it's spinning in the opposite direction. And so now that we've switched it, you can see that it's going in the opposite direction, right? And so whenever this is happening, this is what would cause the robot to start going backwards rather than forwards.
Thanks, Jacob. Now Kenneth will teach you how to program your robots. Now that we've finished the build, I will show you where to go in order to get the app that is needed to program your robot, which Kenneth will then show you how to use. So we are going to go to lego.com/en-us/themes/mindstorms/app. And this will be written at the bottom of your screen, so you can pause and go ahead and type that in. And it will now take us to this page. So we're going to just scroll on down until we get to the app section, which is right here. And this shows you all the places you are able to get the app. I'm going to be using Windows, so we're going to hit the Windows one. If you're using Mac, then go to the Apple Store. So once I hit it, it's going to bring you to this page, and we're going to go ahead and download it. And now we will wait for it to download. So go ahead and hit get. Alright, now that it's downloaded, we are going to hit open. And it may take a minute to go ahead and open. It's okay if it takes a minute. Go ahead and set a birthday. Just do the basic data. And now we are at this screen, which is where Kenneth will take over.
Hello again. Now that we have finished building our robot, I'm here to help you program it. So when you start up the application, it's going to give you a screen similar to this one. You are going to move your mouse down to the code button, and you're either going to be met with this kind of screen, or you're going to be given the option of Python or code blocks. Make sure to select code blocks because that's what we're going to be doing in this little tutorial. Now before we start coding, you're going to need to connect to your hub. So after turning it on and making sure that the Bluetooth is on, go over to the hub button and press the Bluetooth tab and press connect. Your hub will have a specific name. Mine is named unique name. And so when you press the connect button, it'll connect to the hub. You'll hear a little beep and it will be connected. Now right here you have the main section of your code. This is where all your code will go with all the blocks. And over to the left is all the blocks that you can select from. There's also a bunch of tabs on the far left of it, and you can basically skip around to specific sections of code blocks. For example, the motors tab has stuff specifically related to motors, so you can manipulate one specific motor at a time. Now over in the top right is information about whatever devices you have connected to your hub. So we have motors, which is this big circle with 4 little circles inside of it. And we have the light sensor, which is this square with 1 big circle inside of it. Underneath that is some numbers, and the light sensor has a little circle with a white dot for me. That is going to be the color that it sees, and the numbers are a different value. For the light sensor, that is the reflectivity, and for the motors, that is the rotational position of the specific motor. Each thing has a little letter right next to it. So this motor has an A and this light sensor has a B. That is the port is connected to. And you need to make sure you know which one is which. Make sure to go up to the top left, press these 3 little buttons and rename your project to something descriptive, something that will be easy to find. I am going to name mine Spike Prime Project and then press save to save the name change. So before we go start programming, you're going to want to move to the movement tab and grab 2 blocks, set movement motors and set movement speed. You're going to want to put these right underneath this when program starts block and change the movement motors to whatever your movement motors are. So mine are A and E. And you're going to set the movement speed to something. I'm going to set it to 20% because 100% is a bit too fast for this robot. Now when I press the start button, the robot will move forward until I hit the stop button. And so next we're going to make it so that you can move it forward by pressing a specific key. Move over to the Events tab, scroll all the way to the bottom, grab this when space key pressed, and then change the key to what you want it. Now for my purposes, I am going to use the W key, and so I am going to scroll down and press this W. Next you are going to move over to the Movement tab and grab this Start Moving block. Put this right underneath the when W key pressed, and then move over to the Controls tab. You're going to grab the Wait Until block, put that underneath the Start Moving block. Pop on over to the sensors, and then you're going to grab this little diamond hexagon shape right at the bottom. You're going to put this over here for now. You are not going to use that for one little moment. Scroll down to the operators, grab this not block, put this right onto your section of code, put the key space pressed into the not block, and then change the space into whatever key you have up here with this little event block. Mine is W, so I'm going to set this not key pressed to W, so it will now say not key W pressed. Put this into the Wait Until block, and then go back over to the Movement tab, grab this Stop Moving block, put this underneath the Wait Until block. What this does is when you press down the W key, it's going to start moving. And then this Wait Until block waits, it pauses this block stack until this condition is true. So not key W pressed, which means that This block is going to wait until you have your code to make your robot move forward. And then right after that is the stop moving. Now we will take our movement motors and movement speed blocks and place them under the when W key press block. Now press the start button, and when we press the W key, the robot will move forward, and when we let go, it will stop. Okay, so I'm going to drag this over to the left a bit so we can move on to the next section. Now, if you right click this, you will be given 3 options: duplicate, add comment, and delete block. I am going to duplicate this and put it right here just to showcase what delete block does. It deletes one single block, nothing else, not anything below it. And if you want to delete it all, you can grab the top block and move it off to the left and drop it over there. So I am going to also duplicate it again, put it over there. And if you add a little comment to this little block, and I will say, this makes the robot move forward. And then if you want to collapse this comment, make it take up a little less space, press this little down arrow. And if you want to delete it, press this X. Now back to the little block that I duplicated, I am going to change this key to S. I am going to make this little block move the robot backwards. So you're also going to remember to change this wait until condition, change the key press to S. Next, we're going to go to the set movement speed, and I am going to set this to -20% so that way it moves backwards. You notice I have this little minus sign in front of the 20 to show that it is negative. With this code, the robot will now move backwards. So if you run it and then you hold down the S key, it will move backwards, and you can press the W key to move it forwards. I'm gonna go ahead and press stop. And now we're going to make it turn left and right. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this block. I am going to remove all of the pink blocks from it. And we're going to go over to the control tab. You're going to want to grab the do this and this. What that basically does is runs the code in both little sections at the same exact time. And then I'm going to put the wait until right underneath the do this and this. And you're going to move over to the motors tab. Now you're going to grab the A start motor with this little spinny sign, and you're going to want 2 of them. Now put one underneath one section of the do this, and put the other under the other section of do this. Now change both motors to whichever port you have your movement motors connected to. So again, mine are connected to A and E. So I am going to change one to A and one to E. I'm gonna go ahead and move this up a bit so you can see it better. And move this over so it's not taking up the space. Next, we're going to click the S. I am going to change it to A. And I am also going to change the wait until block so that it also says not key A pressed. Put a stop motor block right underneath the wait until. So again, you're going to need 2 of these, and change the motor to whatever motors are your movement motors. Again, mine are A and E. And now when I run this and hold down A, it's going to spin. And then when I let go, it stops spinning. So I'm going to go ahead and stop it again. And then we are going to duplicate this entire block and change the keys again. So now I am going to use the D key and make sure to change both of them. And then you're going to change the spinny sign so that it's pointing the other way. And make sure to do this for both of them. And then when I run this and I press down the D key, it is now going to turn in the opposite direction. So as you can see, now you can have your robot move around a bit. Now I am going to move down a bit on my code so I have more extra space. Your next step is going to be moving the two little arms on either end of your robot. So move over to the Events tab. So scrolling all the way to the bottom, grab this when key pressed again. Now for my first arm, I am going to have it change with the up arrow. I'm going to make this move up. So this is basically the exact same thing as the previous ones, but you're only going to move one single motor, so don't bother going to the Movements tab or adding a do this and this block. You are going to grab the A start motor, put it underneath that when up arrow pressed, move down to the Control tab. You're going to grab this wait until block and do basically the same thing. So if I go over here and press duplicate, I can duplicate this not block. And it's much easier that way, much faster. I'm going to change this A to up arrow. And then I am going to move over to the Motors tab and grab a stop motor. Change the motors to whichever motor your arms are. I am going to change mine to C because that is one of the arms. And when I change both of them, that should hopefully make it so that it can move. As you can see, the bulldozer arm moved up. And that is exactly what we want because I have this set to the up arrow. Now, let's duplicate this block and change it so that it says down arrow for all the keys. And we're going to change the spinning sign to the opposite side. And then when we run this, and press down arrow, the bulldozer arm is going to move down. Moving on to the other arm, my other arm, the thing you're going to use to pick up things, is connected to the D motor. So it's basically the same thing. I'm going to copy this when up arrow key pressed and this when down arrow key pressed. You are going to change the motors, make sure to do that. Mine are D, so I'm changing them to D. Changing them to D. Next, I'm going to change the arrow key. So I want this to do left arrow, and I want the other side to do right arrow. So make sure to change the wait until blocks. And then when I run this, this arm will move up when I press left and move down when I press right. Of course, I would rather have it do the opposite, so I'm going to go ahead and change these real quick. You can either do what I'm doing right now, which is changing each key, or something a bit faster, which is just changing the spinny things, the spinny symbols to the other ones. And now, when I press right arrow, it goes up, and left arrow goes down. And when you're moving these arms, if you move them too far past the point where they can go, it will make a loud clicking sound and the arm will start moving back and forth. Try not to do that too much. You don't want to break anything. So that is basically how you code the robot to move each motor. If you want to do something specifically with the light sensor, you can go over to the Sensors tab and grab one of these. So I am going to make this stop when the color is blue. So I am going to take out this not key W pressed and instead put this little B is color red. Change this to whatever color you want it to. So I want blue. And I am going to assume that the light sensor at B is the correct light sensor that we want. There are two light sensors on this robot, so make sure you have the right side or you put in both in the wait until block. The way to put in both is if you take this out and move down to the operators tab, you can put either an or an and block. The and block makes it so that both sensors have to have the same color, or both sensors have to have the color you specified. We will be using the or block. the OR block works in a way so that if either sensor sees the color you gave it, then it will be true. So I'm going to change this to F, and so this will wait until either sensor sees blue. So I'm going to start this, and then it's going to keep moving, and then as you can see, it stopped once it reached that blue piece of tape. So then I'm going to stop the program, and that is basically how you program your Lego Spike Prime. So I'm going to open up a different project that I made beforehand. I'm going to go to File at the top left, press Open, and then open this demo LMS. And as you can see, there is a lot more code with this one. I've added a few comments to tell myself what each thing does. And it basically does the exact same thing, but it has a few extra things. Running it now, and so I am going to have this pickup stuff. As you can see, bulldozer arm does up and down arrows. Picking up arm does left and right arrows for me. Now I'm going to move this forward and then pick this up. And then I'm going to move it forward a bit more and then drop it down. And then I am going to move back a bit. And as you can see, it's in the little goal. I am going to turn around the robot. And I am going to go pick up this little other one over here. And then I'm going to make it go all the way around right there. And then I am going to drop this into the little rectangle right there. And then if I leave the little space, as you can see, both little boxes are inside of the goal.
You now know how to program your Lego Spike Prime. Have fun coding!